Recording in progress.
Camera.
Good evening and welcome to the January 8th, 2024 Tualatin City Council meeting. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for attending via Zoom or in person. Our first item of business tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilor Reyes.
Right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilor Reyes. Next up on the agenda is public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for anyone to address the City Council regarding an issue that is not on tonight's agenda. Please give yourself about a 3-minute limit when addressing the council. I've got a few people signed up in the room. Do we have anybody on Zoom? I'll do them first. All right, so then I'll start with folks that are here tonight. First up is Doug Childs. Welcome.
Thank you. Assume this is the place to speak.
That's it.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. My name is Doug Childs. I'm a partner with Northwest Cannabis Company here in the city of Tualatin. We are a member of the Tualatin Chamber of Commerce, a gold member. We are active in the community through volunteering, donations, and support for the Tualatin Riverkeepers, and we employ 25 employees full-time. So I'm here tonight to request that the City of Tualatin extend our allowable business hours to better serve the community and to enable us to compete fairly with other dispensaries in nearby cities. Our hours are currently 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and we are requesting to be open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. This is within the OLCC acceptable operating hour laws. Dispensaries outside of Tualatin, less than 1.5 miles away from us, have up to 50% more retail hours than we do, open from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Our competitors are actively recruiting our workforce, and they are attracting our customers out of Tualatin with better access. Extending our hours of operation offers also much needed flexibility for our medical cannabis customers. These customers use cannabis for chronic pain. They use it for disease, stress, anxiety, sleep disorders, and it's also used by our veterans to treat PTSD. Many of these customers are living on fixed incomes, and they have travel challenges, and they need access to medicine that cannot be mailed to them like you can with a traditional subscription or prescription mail method. They often rely on caregivers. Many of these caregivers are family members, and these caregivers come get their medicine for them because they can't physically make it into our store. And caregivers typically have day jobs, and they will need to come before or after work in order to get the medicine for their patients. In the mornings, we have people sitting in their cars, typically medical patients as well as elderly people waiting for us to open. In the evenings, we typically have a rush at the door, and many times we have to turn customers away unserved in the evenings because of our closing hours. We have great relationships with our business neighbors who support this request. We have over 1,000 signatures of our customers who support this petition for extended hours. And I'll finish with this. We've been open for 2 years in this community. We operate with absolute integrity and strict adherence to the law. We pay our taxes. We support the local Tualatin community business ecosystem. And we've been a positive member for this community. We humbly ask that you grant this request. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you for coming. Looks like it's Don. Yep. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Don Pearson. I'm also a partner at the Northwest Cannabis Company. So my journey in cannabis, like many others, is very personal. A close family member of mine was severely impacted by the opioid addiction epidemic. Her journey in addiction includes abuse, incarceration, attempted suicide, and a near-fatal overdose. In 2017, the Department of Health and Human Services finally declared the opioid crisis a public health emergency. According to the American Medical Association, nearly 75% of drug overdose deaths in 2020 involved some form of opioid. In 2022, with the rise of fentanyl, over 100,000 Americans have died due to an overdose. Since cannabis legalization began at the state level, significant research has been conducted on the benefits of cannabis, both to individuals and to the states and communities that have enacted the legalization of cannabis. Well-respected institutions such as Johns Hopkins University, Harvard, the Journal of American Medical Associates, and the National Institute of Health have all published numerous studies detailing the measured and potential benefits of access to medical cannabis. I'll share some of what I consider to be the most notable findings. A study published by the Journal of American Medical Associates conducted at the Philadelphia Veterans Affairs Medical Center found that the states that permitted access to medical marijuana had a nearly 25% lower annual death rate due to opioid overdose. In March of 2021, the VFW released a placebo-controlled double-blind study that concluded that cannabis patients reported a decrease in the severity of their PTSD symptoms and were nearly 2.5 times more likely to no longer meet the criteria for a PTSD diagnosis. In 2022, an NIH study concluded that cannabis use led to a significant lower risk of being exposed to fentanyl. Now, cannabis research is still in its infancy, and all of these studies, they call for more and continued larger scale studies on the effect of cannabis. So new research is coming out all the time, but I do believe that the early data shows that cannabis is helping. All sources and links that I've referred to are provided in the packet that we've distributed, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Jennifer. Welcome.
Hi, thanks. My name is Jennifer Elaine, and I will not be as well-spoken as my predecessors here this evening. Very sorry. Like I said, my name is Jennifer Elaine. I'm 46 years old. I live in Wilsonville. I'm a small business owner. I'm a health insurance agent that specializes in Medicare. Been doing that for about 12 years now. I'm also 90% disabled from the military. I was active duty Army for 11 years. And yeah, 90% disabled. I have the PTSD and a whole lot of other fun things to deal with. Making the switch from the Vicodin that the VA was giving me to marijuana had a huge impact on my health, both physically and mentally. Some days you don't want to leave the house. Some days you don't want to eat. It's just the way it is sometimes. Marijuana does not solve all my problems. Right? I solve my problems. But it makes it easier. Right? I'm here today because I think it's important that the Northwest Cannabis Company be able to stay open longer every day. I know for a fact that places like Kroger have certain hours of certain days where you'll see buses from assisted living facilities pulled up front, and they have these senior days. So the seniors can go in there and they can shop freely. Now, the store isn't closed to everybody else. Anybody else can go in there, but they don't, right? Because of the time of day. So I think that if they were open earlier in the morning, I know I, for one, would be in there. I have morning meetings that start at 7 a.m. I don't want to be out until 8, 9 p.m. I don't want to be out past 4 p.m., quite frankly. Yeah, you know, I wanted to come and I wanted to say that. This is an important group. I used to have to drive to Sherwood or Portland to get some medication, and now it's just right up the road from the house. This is a great group. They're supporting the community, and yeah, I think we should keep them open longer every day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Glenn?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Glenn Fee. I'm Executive Director of Tualatin Riverkeepers. Tualatin Riverkeepers works to protect and restore the Tualatin River watershed. Most residents know us through our river rentals at Cook Park and Tiger and through guided paddles out of places like Tualatin Community Park, which is one of our favorite places to go out of. We're thrilled that the success of TRK and partners over the years has led to the river becoming a destination. And I'm especially excited by the city of Tualatin's embrace of the river. We're really excited to see what happens over the next couple of years with development there. Our success is dependent upon the support of more than 500 members, thousands of volunteers, and foundation and corporate partners. Oftentimes, this corporate support comes through either volunteer groups or through sponsorship. We're grateful for each of these models, but few businesses embrace our work at every level. Northwest Cannabis is one of those businesses. We not only receive strong financial support from Northwest Cannabis, but employees and customers often attend our stewardship events. In fact, a couple times over the past year, we ask people where they come from. How did you find out about us? We've had a few people who have volunteered that they've learned about us through Northwest Cannabis. They have a great display up in there and they encourage their customers to come out and volunteer with us, and they do. Northwest Cannabis is an exemplary partner of Tualatin Riverkeepers, and I hope that they remain a foundation in our community for years to come. So really encourage your support of their expanded hours. Thank you.
Thank you. And Aaliyah? Welcome back from vacation.
Yeah, slammed right into a tsunami, too. Mayor and city councilors, I'm here to give my personal advocacy support from the Tualatin Chamber of Commerce for Northwest Cannabis. I have never worked with a group of people who've been more classy, more honorable, more committed, more invested in the city of Tualatin, in the people of Tualatin, in the chamber. They have invested, they have stood up and been counted. It's only fair that they be allowed to have the same kind of competitive hours that the other shops have in their area and in the other towns that sell the same product. But from a personal standpoint, you may not know, but I was raised in Southern California. I went to high school, junior high and high school in San Diego, and then I moved up to LA. My father was a severe alcoholic who would go into rages, absolute rages at different times throughout my childhood. And it was horrifying, it was traumatic. But what was interesting was that in his 40s, he discovered cannabis, and he became a different person. He was more gentle, he was more focused, he was more able to handle his stresses, and he became a much better father. Throughout that time, my brother became homeless and addicted on really hard drugs, heroin and other drugs, Quaaludes, all kinds of crazy things in LA that was going on during the 80s. He became homeless, he destroyed his liver, but what saved him in the last 5 years of his life was cannabis, and it got him off the hard stuff, and it got him able to function in different therapy programs. So from a personal standpoint, I had been really against marijuana when I was in high school because I was a good girl. And I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that stuff. I will never do that stuff. But by the time my dad reached his 40s and everything started to change in my family because of cannabis, I started rethinking that maybe it's not alcohol that's the problem, the good stuff. Maybe it's cannabis that's the better choice or the better way if you're going to partake in some substance like that. So I changed my whole viewpoint about cannabis, and then later in my life I became interested in plant medicine, all kinds of supplements and nutrition and how that can be a medicine, and different plants and how they are medicinal. And cannabis is a serious, wonderful supplement that we're still studying. It does many, many wonderful things. But beyond all of that, having said all of that, Doug Childs and Donald Pearson are stellar human beings and citizens in Tualatin, and I think they deserve a vote for more hours. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I have who's signed up. You don't have to be signed up. Anyone else in the room want to let us know what they think? Anyone show up in Zoom, Nicole? No. All right. Then, okay. Thank you all for coming tonight. Next thing up on our agenda is our consent agenda. These are items considered routine. They will be adopted by one motion unless someone on the council would like an item removed and heard separately later tonight. Tonight, the consent agenda consists of item number 1, consideration of approval of the work session and regular meeting minutes of December 11th, 2023. Item number 2, consideration of resolution number 5746-24, awarding a contract for a Parks and Recreation Facilities Assessment and Study to Cezanne Group, Inc. Item number 3, consideration of resolution number 5747-24, authorizing Recycle Plus expanded recycling service and rates. Item number 4, consideration of resolution 5748-24, awarding a contract for HVAC on-call, ordinary repairs, and scheduled maintenance to Reitmeyer Northwest. Item number 5, consideration of resolution number 5749-24, amending water, sewer, stormwater, road, and parks utility fee rates inside the city of Tualatin, and rescinding resolution 5710-23. And finally, item number 6, consideration of resolution number 5750-24, authorizing the city manager to execute a second amendment to an intergovernmental agreement with Washington County related to the towing of vehicles. Would any councilor like an item removed from consent?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as read. Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda as read. Any discussion on those motions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you. That brings us to special reports. We have our very first outside agency grant awardee report, Family Promise Tualatin Valley. Welcome, Elise.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're so glad to be here today. We've had your support for years, and I think this is the first opportunity I've had to present to the Council, so we're very grateful for that. Make sure I'm doing this right. Excellent. So just a brief history for those of you who don't know much about us. We are an affiliate of a national organization, and we started as a rotational shelter model where families would sleep for a week at a time in different civic or religious organizations. We had our day center, which was a house behind Rolling Hills Church, and our families went there for showers and laundry and case management. And so that was our original model, and we had about 30 or so community partners who were engaged in that process. And then the world changed, and we had to stop that because we couldn't gather in churches and we couldn't have volunteers doing things. So we moved to a hotel-based model at that point. So that was about spring of 2020, and we had, in the original model, 3 to 5 families at a time, and so we moved those families into a hotel setting. And over the course of the next year, we had increased to about 15 households through some CARES Act funding. And then by fall of 2021, we had increased to an additional 20 households. Washington County had come and said, would you operate a cold weather shelter for families? So we increased to close to 40 households, and that went well enough that they said, would you continue on with those 40 households? So that's where we were for a little bit, and now we're moving. Our goal is to move up to 70 households who will be in our shelter. Currently, I say currently, it changes every day. I think we're at about 56 or 58, somewhere in there. So that's been our kind of growth trajectory. These are the 2022 numbers, and I tried to get 23 in real quick, and we just don't have our math done yet. But it will be this or more. So that was from last year, 22. So, 862 individuals served, 250 families. And this is inclusive. When we say individuals served, we have different programs. So that's not necessarily all of our shelter. But the thing we're most proud of, and I know will be consistent for this year, is about 78% of folks go from our shelter into stable housing. It really is a rehousing program, what we're focused on. So that's kind of the important part. You did not start my timer. Now I have no idea.
You don't have a timer. Don't worry about it.
Okay, I don't have to worry about it. Okay, somebody told me 10 minutes, so I was looking to see where I was. All right. I won't worry too much, but I could talk all day. Somebody asked me to come speak somewhere, and I'm like, do you need 3 minutes or 45 minutes? Give me a range here. All right, so yeah, 78% of folks go into stable housing. So that's kind of the number we're always very proud of, and we will continue in that trend. So our three main programs are shelter, which is, keeping families somewhere safe to sleep, providing them food, providing them case management, and housing navigation services. Our fastest growing program is what we call eviction prevention and shelter diversion, and that's focused on keeping families in the housing that they have. And so that is funded in a variety of different ways, but generally involves a combination of advocacy and landlord mediation and then direct family support. So it can be something like a family is being evicted for rental arrears. It can be something where there's been some misunderstandings and there needs to be someone who comes in and does translation support, or sometimes it's an illegal eviction and we refer them to the Oregon Law Center. So there's a combination of things that happen there, but it's much, much, much more cost effective and so much less traumatic if you can keep folks housed. So that's been kind of one of our biggest growth areas. And I think at this point we have, over the next 2 years, close to $1 million of direct assistance committed to that program. So that's pretty exciting. And then what we call graduate services, which means that we understand that rehousing is not a straight line path for folks, that things happen along the way. So you can be housed, you can be employed, and then there's an illness or a job loss or a situation with transportation. And we always encourage folks to call us and come back to us. And we find creative ways to help people stay housed so that they don't kind of fall in those cracks. So the big news we had in this past year was purchase of our shelter site, the former Quality Inn Hotel property in Tigard, and we call it Bridge to Home. So you can see a little bit of a picture of the outside and then one of our model rooms. It's a 113-room property, and our goal is 70 rooms of shelter, with the rest being office spaces, on-site resources, and hopefully co-locating services in the near future with other organizations. Some changes we've had since the beginning of time is we were a family-only shelter, and then we've increased our capacity to include some adult-only households, in particular medically fragile adults or families with dependent adult children because of special needs, things like that. We've lowered our barriers. When people were all sleeping together in rooms in churches, we had to be a little bit more careful, and it's been good to be able to provide that more opportunity to more folks. So we are a much lower barrier shelter. It doesn't say that in here, but we now can include pets, which is very exciting. We have dogs on site. I'm told we have like 13 dogs in the hotel, and I only ever see 2 of them. The rest must be pretty quiet. But we have an initial response position, so a person whose job it is really just to engage with the community. When people call, we have a shelter wait list, but they can help them do that initial assessment. They can point them to additional resources. They can help decide which program would be most appropriate, or connect them to kind of the myriad of other community resources. She has kind of a thick binder of all sorts of things. We have our food pantry and clothing pantry on site. Since we have started the hotel, we now have a kitchen manager. I'll talk a little bit about what needs to be done at the hotel, but right now he's working off-site at 2 different church locations that have commercial kitchens, and he's doing the meal prep there with volunteers and then bringing it to the hotel to serve to the households with also volunteers. I'm going to say that word a lot too. And then our goal would be to, probably a priority would be to co-locate mental health services. Of the folks who aren't part of that 78%, that's a pretty high percentage, is folks who really could benefit from mental health support on their journey. And so that would be an ideal thing to have on our property. This space has opened up a world of possibility for us, what we call enrichment programs. When we were renting hotel rooms, we rented 2 extra rooms for office space, and I think 1 extra to serve as like a pantry or a storage or something. But there was no gathering space. We were at Extended Stay Tigard, and we were scattered all over the property. It was a very large hotel. There was no sense of, cohesive anything. Now we use what used to be the breakfast room at the hotel, not just for the family meals, but for all sorts of things. So we have bingo nights, we have financial literacy classes for the adults. We created a playroom, I think that's the next slide, with a few pictures. We have after-school tutoring, and then we try to cover a few activities during the holidays. We had just a plethora of things over Christmas. We had a duo come in and do a concert. We had a Santa Claus come in so families could have photos. We had a solstice party. We had a whole room dedicated to presents where families could shop. So we have just so many more opportunities both to have families have a real healing experience in shelter while they're working towards housing and a way to engage our community. That's our playroom. So ways folks can volunteer to make and serve meals, grounds project, any of these enrichment programs. And, you know, folks come up with things all the time. I have a group that would like to do a ice cream social. Fantastic. We're open to it. We have monthly drives and other events that we try to keep people in the loop through our Facebook feed or our newsletter. And that'll be things like we always need socks and underwear. We always need toiletries. We need pet supplies pretty frequently. So that's a way for the community to engage. You can see there were goats. We had our back to school drive where we handed everything out, and we had a group that brings goats to things, come and bring goats. And apparently the outside space wasn't acceptable. So we had goats in the lobby, which was awesome. So planned renovations, the hotel had some fairly good things structurally and some things that were really kind of high on our hit list. The first is to create a commercial kitchen. The hotel didn't have a restaurant on site, and so it just has a little kind of grab and go breakfast area. So we're creating a commercial kitchen. We need to fill in the pool because we can't afford the insurance. But we want to do is create an outside covered space for families to be. You know, while it's wonderful for families to have the autonomy of their own room, if you've ever been trapped in a room with small children day upon day upon day, we need those other spaces for folks to be. So our playroom is one, but we want kind of a big space for the bigger kids as well. We need to create a few more community spaces. We want on each floor to have a case management office with an adjoining room with a large window that has a play space. So when the parents are talking about hard things or doing some of the hard work, the kids don't have to be right in the room. They don't have to have that distraction, but they can be kind of just adjacent. We need new laundry facilities. There's commercial laundry on site, but only one washer and dryer available to the families right now. So we have had units donated by Standard TV and Appliance. They're a nice local business that's been very supportive. We just need to get all the plumbing and the structure surrounding that. The parking lot and back needs some things. There's ADA accessibility in the front, but not the back. And then, as we mentioned, redoing kind of that lobby area and some of the ground floor to help co-locate some of those services. And then Frank might have just casually mentioned the sprinkler situation. This funding came through Oregon Community Foundation, and it was a statewide initiative called Project Turnkey. And part of that initiative was that it couldn't create any zoning problems in the communities. It just was and existed. When the agencies who were awarded this funding found a property, you know, so be it. However, when we went to apply for permits and layer upon layer came out of what was going on there, turns out they don't have adequate fire suppression system in the hotel. So that added another $1.3 million, I think, to our remodel budget to get that going. So there's always things. This is a very abbreviated list of our planned renovations. So ways in general for the community to help. I don't know what the communication system is in Tualatin, but, you know, we've done things in Tigard, like their little podcast, and every once in a while we'll blast something out in their newsletter or e-newsletter. So, you know, if there's ways we can engage with your community a little bit more, we would love to. If you subscribe to our newsletter, there's so many volunteer opportunities now. We have fundraisers periodically, including our recurring giving programs. So does anyone have questions for me?
Questions for Elise?
I do have a question.
Councilor Gonzalez.
How does somebody transition from this housing?
Yeah, so there are a few different ways. One of our primary sources for funding right now is that Portland Metro Bond funding. In Washington County, that's called Supportive Housing Services. And they have done some really, really thoughtful work with this funding so that folks who are have a certain level of, you know, kind of deficit coming in or disability or something like that have housing vouchers and 2 years worth of case management. So the big model is housing first, get people in their own housing as soon as possible, but that falls apart if you just get them in and leave them there. And so the fact that they'll have these sort of tapered vouchers along with case management that follows them for a couple years kind of helps build that stability where it'll maybe start at 100% and then go downward. So that's on one end of the spectrum. Some folks, it's more circumstantial. They just need some time to you know, restructure and get back on their feet and get the job and get that. And there we also have some gap funding that might help them with security deposits or things like that. We do work to develop landlord relationships and awareness of all the low-income housing in the area, and that often helps that we've developed these things that helps folks overcome some of the barriers that might appear on paper.
Wonderful. And also, you're offering various services for, do you do any kind of training classes, resume building, or any of those kinds of things to provide?
We typically do a little bit of referring for that. We have some folks who do it on an individual basis if someone wants it. As a group, the biggest thing we've started is now this financial literacy class where we're offering that across the board. The other stuff is more on an individual basis if someone wants help from their case manager. Everyone meets with their case manager weekly at a minimum, and so that's how they can do that. Otherwise, we partner usually with outside agencies for those sort of things.
I'll close with this. I can possibly help you with the irrigation for the facility. So maybe afterward, we can talk about this. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Fire suppression system? Oh, no, this is not outdoors. So the word sprinklers is a little misleading. It's not outdoor. It's a fire suppression system inside the hotel. It currently has it in all the hallways, but needs it in every single room. So, yes, but thank you. Yeah. We could talk about the landscaping because that's a whole nother
It needs
thing.
it too.
Yes, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Council Brooks.
Questions?
Thank you for your presentation and the work in the community. I have had the opportunity to hear from your organization also on the PAB, so that's been, it's been fun to kind of watch the evolution of the organization. And I remember going to the grand opening of the little house behind the church, so I don't even know what that's being used for anymore. But I did want to say, just from a perspective of the social work perspective, that the strength in the programming that's so evidence-based, with having a case manager that does an individual plan and particularly tailors it for the individual, because everyone's story is so different and their needs are so different, that I applaud that effort. And also to have a goal for having services co-located on the grounds is also a really strong point of your programming. So I just really want to appreciate what you're doing right now, because I know that people want people inside, not on the street, and we want a way that, is evidence-based, that shows that people can thrive and succeed really well. And just for information, how long does an average person stay in the program, and what kind of outcomes do you expect for individuals that are served by Family Promise?
Yeah, I think right now the average stay is 3 or 4 months, so that's it's pretty short. Sometimes the wait is getting on a list. Sometimes it's applying for, apartments where there's already, 50 people who are applying. It really depends on how people come, whether they have evictions on their records, whether they have property debt, whether they have income or the ability to create income. You can go even further back and say, well, do you have your identification, or do we need to get that replaced first and foremost? We also have a number of folks who are fleeing domestic violence situations, and so that can be kind of tricky. So, for us, a positive outcome is stable housing. And so we're looking for, hopefully this year, based on last year, some longitudinal data as well. That's been a little bit harder to track, just because sometimes you're stably housed, you don't talk to us anymore. But we would love to include that as well, just because it is one of our goals, not just to get people housed, but to keep them housed. So that 78% is great, but we want to hopefully then report that a year later, the majority of those folks are still housed.
Thank you. And then, also, the kids, when people find themselves too, they get to stay in their own school.
Oh, yeah, that used to be a big thing I talked about with our program, and somehow that's gone by the wayside. But we had someone come in on a tour recently and ask what school they went to, and we said, well, their own schools. And they said, well, what are you talking about? There's a law in the books called McKinney-Vento that allows for kids to, if they're experiencing homelessness, stay in their school of origin. The school district will pick them up wherever they're staying, and so that they have that continuity of their teachers and their friends and their classrooms, because of course it's most disruptive on these little people, right? However, if you're couch surfing, if you're staying in your car, if you're just trying to hold it together, you have to fill out a form. You have to turn it in at the office. You have to make sure all the steps are followed. So that's one of the things that our case managers do upon intake is say, where was your kid going to school? Where would they like to be, to be in their classroom, to be comfortable? And so, in the morning and the afternoon, we have a parade of buses and vans and cars coming through that hotel, picking kids up and taking them all over the place. So, yeah, thank you for
again.
bringing
Thank-
that up. Yeah.
Thanks for your work.
Councilor Reyes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Some of my questions have been answered. So, but I was wondering, the houseless community that you're taking in, are there typically families or individuals that are kind of working or I guess I'm wondering if you take in people from like chronic homelessness or chronic houseless individuals, or is it, how do they get to your program?
Sure. So right now we are, because of the nature of our funding, primarily getting referrals through the community, through the county, through Community Connect, and they prioritize based on a number of the things you talked about. So we are primarily a family shelter. I would say over 80% of our folks, I think 87%, something like that, are families with minor children, and then the other percentage are medically fragile adults. But the county has an algorithm when someone calls for help that puts people in a different hierarchy on the wait list. So someone who is truly unhoused, who's been sleeping on the street in a vehicle, in a place not fit for habitation, they go to the top of the list. Someone who's maybe got a doubled up, or at least has a safe place to sleep for now, or is in a hotel room for a while, ends up a little bit lower down the list. And there are programs through supportive housing services, because again, I'm singing the county's praises, but they really have been fairly thoughtful. It's not that there aren't a few glitches in the system. There are glitches. However, they also have some rapid rehousing programs, and we have 3 case managers dedicated to that. So folks who are on the wait list for shelter also can get assigned a case manager. And they can go from houselessness to housing without having to wait for a shelter bed. So we have 3 staff who are dedicated to that purpose as well. So the folks who come to us are a variety of folks who've been chronically homeless or situationally homeless, and the prioritization comes in what their living situation is usually.
Thank you. And another question, and you might have answered this one, but do they pay any kind of rent or anything?
No.
Okay. So it's all provided for
Yes.
them.
Yes, the space is provided, food is provided, case management, the clothing pantry, everything that they receive on site.
Okay. And where are you located so people can find you or contact you, or how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the current space is a former Quality Inn on Tigard, and I'm sure the address is maybe not in this packet of information, but I can email it out to everyone. Yeah,
Thank you.
and make sure that
There's
you have
a-
it, yeah.
Mongolian Grill and America's,
I
Discount
know
Tire
where it
now?
is.
Discount
I
Tire.
just feel like if the community is listening and
Yeah.
this is on record, I think that it
It's
would
a
be.
No, that's true. I do want to be clear that we're not a
How do
drop-in
you-
center,
yeah.
and so that's one of the, we don't necessarily blast our location out to the world. Obviously, we want volunteers to know, we don't hide where we are, but we just want to be clear that we're also not a drop-in day center. So people who are experiencing homelessness can't come in, we're not a warming center, we don't have day services. You can't come and just drop in and see a case manager. That would be Just Compassion, they're amazing, they're on
They
Hall
are.
Avenue, and they have those services for anybody, yeah.
Okay, good. No, I kind of know where you are. I just was wondering
Yeah,
if
yeah.
there's a process on how they can find you or eventually.
Right, and
people want their
I
own
should
space.
make sure you have our number for that initial response position for referrals, and that's the thing you would put out to the community for sure, is people can call and at least go through that assessment, find out if there are interim resources, and get put on the wait list.
Quick question, are you connected with 411? Can people dial that too?
Yep,
and find
absolutely.
out? Okay.
Yeah, so they'll get someone who will do that. It's called Phase 1 assessment is what they use to just kind of go through where someone is and create that hierarchy and,
Or how to find a spot for them.
right, exactly.
Thank you.
Other questions? Well, thanks, Elise.
All right, thank you
You're
all so very much.
Longtime
Very appreciate it.
supporter. We've known each other
Yes,
for how
yeah,
many
we
years
appreciate
now?
you. Even today, I emailed him asking for a favor, so we're very appreciative of this relationship in
yeah.
the city of Tualatin. Thank you so
All right,
much.
Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
All right, that brings us to items removed from consent, which we didn't have any. Council communications. Don't see any. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussions on the motions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right, Michigan. Then that brings us to an end. Have a good evening, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.
Recording stop.